Quoting the late Formula One driver, Chris Amon, "It's not physical ability which makes drivers retire, it's just the loss of desire." It is one thing to criticise Ricciardo, but it is another thing if the driver admits that his own racecraft is bad. After another poor outing at the Canadian GP, the Aussie blamed his bad outings on a lack of desire and even questioned his own testosterone levels. "What are the things that are affecting my performances? Am I coming into a race weekend not feeling energised? I don't know if I need to be a bit angry or just get my testosterone up." The question a lot of people wouldn't voice out in public is it time for Ricciardo to retire? Former racing driver Tom Coronel thinks so, and he said Ricciardo threw his career away because of money. Speaking in an exclusive interview for a Dutch magazine, Coronel questioned Ricciardo's reasons for leaving Red Bull. "A few years ago, when Daniel Ricciardo left Red Bull and went for the money at Renault, I already knew he chose the money and not his racing heart. It is a nice story, the Ricciardo 2.0 who learned from his mistakes, blah, 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 but he can't do it anymore. He didn't succeed at McLaren, he didn't succeed at AlphaTauri, and he will never succeed again." Coronel was referring to Ricciardo's exit in 2018 from Red Bull, a team where he has won 7 races and 29 podiums in just 4 years. At the time, the young Verstappen was anointed as number 1, and since he was approaching 30, he decided to cash in at Renault. Former Red Bull executive Mark Gallagher revealed in 2022 that the folks at Red Bull were convinced his move to Renault was purely motivated by big money. Horner loved Ricciardo, and he begged him to stay at Red Bull. Daniel had been the only teammate at the time who had been able to live with Verstappen. But it was not just for team harmony. Horner wanted him because, unlike Verstappen who would barely laugh, Ricciardo's likeable demeanour was perfect for advertising. Ricciardo, at the time, claimed he had done some soul-searching, and he is convinced that Renault was his next destination. He signed a 2-year contract for 2019 and 2020, a deal which will see him earn a staggering $51 million over 2 years. This was a lot of money for any driver at the time. Only Hamilton and 4-time champion Sebastian Vettel earned more than him. Ricciardo might have gotten just 2 podiums at Renault, but it was an extremely productive partnership for the team who didn't have the car to compete. Going to Renault for money was actually not a bad idea, but later switching Renault to McLaren for even more money was what destroyed his career. Cyril, the then Renault manager, rightly predicted that Ricciardo would regret his decision. But what he didn't predict was that Ricciardo's exit would also lead to his own sacking as manager. Renault's never recovered from Ricciardo's exit, and their decline has continued to this day in what we now know as Alpine. The McLaren at the time was undrivable, and Ricciardo couldn't compete against the young Lando Norris. But he won at Monza in 2021. Ricciardo's career has come full circle as the Aussie is now begging Red Bull to make him the second driver to Verstappen. This was the same seat he passed up on 6 years ago. Tom Coronel believes the Aussie's career cannot be redeemed, and he lined up a job that he felt would be beneficial. He is an ideal co-commentator or analyst for motorsport. He is funny, has flair, and can handle everything well. Go ahead and do that, but stop with Formula One. And he has no business being in a training team anyway. Formula One is the class for the top 20 drivers in the world, and he has not been part of that for a long time. While this is a vicious attack on Ricciardo, Coronel hasn't said something that Ricciardo himself has not predicted. During this year's Miami race, Ricciardo admitted that if his fate doesn't improve, then he doesn't deserve to be in the sport. "If I am getting my arse whooped, I don't deserve to be here." Whenever Ricciardo decides to retire is up to him, but we can all conclude that he would actually do a great job in front of the camera post-retirement. Some argued that the only reason Red Bull can't get rid of him now is because they are using his face to sell more Red Bull cans. Former world champion Villeneuve has been the harshest critic of Ricciardo, especially after the race in Montreal in June. "Why is he still in Formula One?" Villeneuve said during a Sky Sports broadcast. "We're hearing the same thing now for the last 4-5 years. We have to make it better for him. Poor him. It's been 5 years of that. Maybe you make that effort for Lewis Hamilton, who's won multiple championships. You don't make that effort for a driver that can't cut it. Go home. There's someone else who can take your place." Ricciardo also fired back at him. "I still don't know what he said, but I heard he's been talking shit." Martin Brundle believed that Ricciardo destroyed his own career the day he left Red Bull. He could have stayed back and fought in one of the best machinery. He argued that the Aussie has never been quite the same driver again. At the end of the day, it is not our call, as long as there is a team willing to keep him, and he also desires to race. Ricciardo has the right to remain in the sport, but we would like to read your comments. Is it time for Ricciardo to quit? This is Front Lockout, signing off.